Welcome, everyone, to our Aging Project Mini for today. This Aging Project Mini is kind of our last session in the series that we've been kind of looking at over the last year called The Grit and Grace of Aging. We have gone through a lot of different aspects of aging. We've concentrated a little on the grit and we've concentrated a little on the grace. We have invited a panel today to kind of wrap this up a little bit and just have what I hope is just kind of a casual discussion amongst us and amongst those of you who are tuning in today. This particular session will be on our Wilshire YouTube channel, so you can view it later. Maybe that's how you're viewing it now, and you can share this with your friends. You can share the link with your friends, and we welcome you to continue this discussion as you can in the future. I'm Steve Willey. I am the Director of Volunteer and Community Education at Wilshire Health and Community Services. And again, we are here as a panel of folks who are all previous presenters of this particular series. And I'm looking very much forward to having this conversation this morning. This is a little like being with family. So I'm very relaxed and hoping that you all of you panelists are here and relaxed as well. Thank you so much, Molly, for all the technical support and work you do to help make this as painless as possible. So I'd like to first introduce our moderator for today. This is Tracy Autry. Tracy is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is also the administrator for our Wilshire Community Services program, which includes among other programs, our senior peer counseling program, our caring callers program, and some of our client services that we have, like Good Neighbor program. Tracy has worked with all kinds of different populations, older adults, youth, also folks who have experienced trauma. My experience with Tracy is that she has amazing communication skills. She's very intuitive, which is kind of why I wanted her to be the moderator of this panel. And she works especially well, I think, with older adults. So we needed to have someone on this panel that was young. So Tracy was the logical person because she bridges that divide quite nicely.
Thank you for considering me young. That's very nice.
Oh, well,
the token youngster.
It's all comparative at this point. So the perfect person to settle in and moderate this panel. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning, Tracy. Jeannie Greensfelder. I've known Jeannie since the 90s. And Jeannie is a wonderful person to know. She embraces her life and life itself through a poet's eye and heart. And that, I think, is a valuable reason for her to be on this panel. In fact, Jeannie has been in the past the poet laureate of San Luis Obispo several years ago. She's a retired psychologist, and I say retired technically because I know Jeannie has been using her skills at Hospice of San Luis Obispo County as a counselor for all these many years. And Jeannie, I think you still do that, don't you? You're still working as a counselor there.
Yes, I'm doing more phone work, but volunteering, yes.
COVID-19 and the ways we have adapted. So Jeannie, I've asked to be here again because her stories, her poetry, her thoughts on the creative flow of aging, I think, are extremely pertinent to this conversation. And for me, she's a wonderful example of how to live with grace, how to age and live with grace. So thanks for coming back, Jeannie. Dr. Dennis Pizzato is also here with us again. Dennis is formerly resident of, I believe, Kauai, right? You lived in Kauai. He's a behavioral specialist. He's written a number of self-help books, maybe 6+ at this point, self-help books geared toward helping folks with their life skills as they age. He's done cancer counseling. He's worked on the Area Agency on Aging Advisory Board, done a lot of volunteer things with the Alzheimer's Association, worked with Kauai Hospice for many years, and also has been a senior peer counselor with us in the past. So in that respect, Dennis is just another member of the family here. One of the great things about Dennis is when he comes into my office to talk about detailed stuff, we talk about detailed stuff for about half a minute and then spend another 45 minutes talking about life and the world and aging and all kinds of great stuff. And I look forward to those insights today as well. Thank you, Dennis, for being here. Dr. Lauren Accord has been a clinical neuropsychologist for, at this point, more than 37 years. Has a PhD in clinical psychology, is a diplomat of the American Board of Clinical Psychology, and a fellow of the Academy of Clinical Psychology. I wouldn't have that all memorized, but I do have it written down. So if I get any of that wrong, Lauren, you'll have to correct me.
I have it memorized.
I figure you have it memorized. Lauren is also one of our senior peer counselors, and in our conversations, I don't know any details about his counseling experiences for obvious reasons, but I do know that Lauren has a wonderful ability to connect with his clients on a very, very personal and soulful level, and I will say mindful level as well. One of the things that I love most about Lauren is that if you give Lauren and I a place to sit, a beverage, let's just say coffee or tea because it's morning, and a room that we can be in, I'm pretty sure that we can wrap up most of the world's problems in less than an hour. Because we have done that on a number of occasions. Getting the rest of the world to go along with us, that's another issue. But I know we can solve those problems because we have on a number of occasions. And I thank you, Lauren, for being here with us this morning as well. So with all of those introductions, I'm going to just kind of hand this over to Tracy to get us going. I'll probably be popping in with questions of my own. As I told Tracy earlier today, I've journeyed into the realm of the post 65-year-old. So I'm now officially a part of this panel and not a moderator.
Congratulations.
So, thank you very much. Happy to be here. Tracy, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Steve. And thank you to all the panelists for joining us again. I know that each of you had an opportunity to present during our aging project. So thank you for being with us again, and really looking forward to a casual conversation. And as things come up that maybe we're not asking, but you really would love to share, please feel free to ask yourself questions if there are things that you think are really important for people to hear about. And I thought a great way to start would just be to kind of get a general idea from each of you about your perspective or take on aging and what that word even means to you and to our society. And I will just let whoever wants to jump in get us started.
My feelings about aging fit into two categories. The first is how I used to feel about aging, and the second is how I feel about aging now that I'm aged. What I used to think about aging was all the usual stereotypes that I think most of us get stuck with. That as you get older, you lose more and more, you gradually become less and less competent and capable. You start losing your balance, you start forgetting things more. You inevitably are going to end up demented, sitting in a corner somewhere drooling. And these were stereotypes that I didn't know I had, but I had them. For example, when I was in that period, I fell a couple of times. So, but this was what elderly people do. They get old and they lose their balance and they start falling. My wife died, and this, of course, was a really difficult thing for me, and still is from time to time. But I had to then take over and do things differently. I haven't fallen or lost my balance since then, which is an
Wow.
interesting phenomenon.
Yeah.
My memory has gotten better. I'm in physically a lot better shape. I'm certainly a lot happier and enjoying life than I used to be when I was believing all those stereotypes. So for me personally, this has been and still is one of the best times of my life. I am enjoying the hell out of it.
Aw. And Lauren, do you think that that was a cognitive shift that you made? Like, I'm no longer going to live my life by those stereotypes. I'm going to create my own pathway.
Well, it was kind of a part of it, I think, was my wife had died and we had been married for 61 years. And this is a horrible experience, but inside of that, along with that horrible experience, there was always the feeling that I have a fantastic opportunity here to live another life, but one that I choose, not one that happens to me. You fall into being married and having kids and working and all of these kinds of things. They sort of happen to you. But now I was choosing, and I still find myself, and I want to keep doing this. When something comes up that I always used to do one way, it was kind of a habit, I'll stop and I'll say, okay, do I want to continue doing it that way, or do I want to do it a different way? Some things I change, some things I keep the same. So I have a lot more control over my life. And I think previously I felt I didn't. I was getting older, I was losing function, all of these kinds of things. But now, I've lost some functions. I don't have the physical ability and endurance I had when I was 70, say. But I have plenty to enjoy myself and to enjoy life. And that's what I intend to keep doing.
Wow, I don't have to say a word because Lauren's basically figured the whole thing out for us. I mean, we're all, and this may be an understatement, but I think it's safe to say we're all students of humanity and students of behavior. And I read between all the lines that Lauren just spoke, and I'm telling you, I could probably do a 3-hour class just using what he said, reading between the lines. But I would like to just tag on to that because he just generated so many, the thoughts were firing away in my head as he was speaking.
Great.
And I just wanted to say, yeah, to everything. But what it did remind me of is how I have gained in knowledge, and I would like to think wisdom, not only for myself as a human being, but in the work that I do with others. And it's been a real learning and growing process working with the senior community. And the first word that I keyed on, which seems to become central to the second word that I key on and the third word that I key on, the first word being loss, the second word being control, and the third word being choice. If you look through my files and my papers, you'd see those words everywhere attached to almost everything. What I learned early on in trying to help others, let alone learn that I had to start helping myself at a certain point, was this idea of loss. I just was preparing for a talk in Kauai, which we're leaving next week. I'm going to do a series of talks. One is coping with grief. and the whole idea of loss and grief. And it's not just related to death. Loss is a major issue related to the aging process. As Lauren already stated, you lose certain abilities, whether they be physical, emotional, whatever. And when we begin to lose things or sense loss, we begin a grieving process. We also begin this process of trying to understand, if we can, that we're losing control. And boy, does that trigger a whole bunch of emotions and different behaviors when you think you're losing control. But I think if I had to choose the most important word out of those three that I picked out of what Lauren said, it would be choice. Because I'm a huge advocate of what is called choice theory. And I think that's where our personal power lies, in our ability to choose how we view every experience in life. So that's really all I wanted to add to that. But I almost feel like this is more personal than it is professional in some ways, for me, especially with this process. I mean, I'm only a year away from 80, and boy, how things have changed in the last few years.
Yeah. I
Anyway.
love that, the reminder of choice that we have, because when you start to feel out of control, you can forget, oh yeah, I do still have a choice. So remembering that you have a choice, even when things feel like they're out of your hands.
Most people react when I say those words with cocked eyebrows and etc. And I admit, yes, sometimes it seems as though all your choices suck, but you still can choose the direction you want to go or how you want to view things. Yes.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Jeannie, would you like to add?
Well, it's tough to come on top of these two excellent descriptors of aging. But I think I would add that my choice in aging has been that it's time to appreciate who I am. And so I spend a lot of time appreciating me and redoing, the critical voice that's inside with, hey, you're wonderful and I love you, that kind of a voice. And I'll read a short little poem that goes with that, that relates to, it's kind of a Hillel choice thing, if we don't love ourselves now, when? And as the days that I will live shorten, it's more and more important to appreciate being here and being a human being and being, having come through whatever, there's something that in my experience that releases and makes life a bit easier inside my head than I think I had when I was younger, and I was studying and learning and trying to master this experience of being a person. But it gets easier, in my opinion, for many of us when we age. A love story. Gather yourselves, critical and kind, scared and brave, thoughtless and hurt. Mistakes and failures meet accomplishments. Like loss and love, they are a package. Embrace it all. Such a coming together is what we came for.
Love that. Thank you so much for sharing that.
That was great.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about the noise here.
Technology.
I think I got some background noise going on too every now and then.
I just wanted to mention that for two things. One is that, yes, I actually asked Jeannie to come on and read poems. So hopefully she'll do that a lot this morning, because I think that feels like the musical accompaniment to what we're talking about today. It feels like poetry has such a good way of bringing things together, bringing ideas together in a way that the soul can hear. And I think that's important to this discussion. So thank you, thank you, Jeannie. I meant to mention that earlier in your introduction, but I'm happy that you're doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, thank you. It brings a depth of soul definitely to our conversation for sure. Yeah. Thank you so much.
I think the poetry thing, I love poetry too, of course, and I've written some that's not very good, but it's been fun. But I think it is really impossible for us to explain how we feel our emotions using words.
Mhm.
But I think the closest we can come to it is poetry.
Mm.
I think that communicates feelings more than just describing things. But that's all we've got is words.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Well, I think our conversation today, we're hoping to definitely end on a positive note, talk about, kind of focus more on the grace of aging. But I think to get there, we have to talk a little bit about the grit. So I'd be curious to hear from the older adults that you work with and in your own life and your own experiences, what would you identify as some of the most significant challenges to successfully aging or aging with joy?
Wow. Well, I think
We
that
need a longer than an hour and a half.
I think the biggest challenge is acceptance of what is at any given point in time. You know, I have found in the many years I've been working with the older population, and not just the older population, because I work with cancer patients as well and dementia patients, but the majority of the older population, in my opinion, spends a lot of time swimming upstream or against the current, as is natural for all of us, and has a lot of trouble accepting what is. And in the process of not wanting to accept, we sort of make everything more difficult on ourselves. It's like we don't really want to be in touch with our reality oftentimes. And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things. And it's actually kind of the starting point or a jumping off point is, okay, this is my situation. I'm going to accept it. What do I do next?
Yeah.
I got into an interesting thing with that. It reminds me of Lily Tomlin's comment that reality isn't all it's cracked up to be. And I tend to believe that. So I do a lot of meditation. I found that it's a really useful tool for me. And I have a full-length mirror in my bedroom. And after I shower, I always stand in front of that mirror for several minutes and just look at who I am. At first, that was difficult to do. It's gotten to the point where I can look at that and say, you're a pretty nice looking guy for 87. And I enjoy it. So it doesn't bother me anymore. Accepting reality.
And I think the hard parts are with clients that I've worked with, you know, when money is an issue and loneliness is an issue. And often those people are not the easiest ones to get along with. So they're not very successful out there. So, you know, I really have strong empathy for people who are in a way stuck in painful aging, and it can be you know, there are times when I wonder about them, how are they doing it? How are, you know, with our medical system being so scattered and difficult and inflation, you know, so yeah, I can go there and feel that pain and feel the gratitude that I haven't had to live through that experience. And so there are things that I don't know. And so I have respect for true grit.
Yeah. Yeah. I really appreciate that perspective. And I would say I hear that a lot from the clients I work with, that word stuck a lot. Do you have ideas about how you get people unstuck when they're in that unhealthy aging pattern?
Well, you've got me calling Wilshire. And, you know, I might call Capslow. You know, it's like, how do people who are stuck access the help that is out there? But it's a little, you've got to be able to maneuver and you never, and I'm not sure exactly what the right help is for the person I'm thinking of, you know, and I have to do more inquiry and so there is a senior book that everybody should have, whatever city you're in, you know, there are senior resources listed somewhere. Just keep finding them and demanding them, you know.
That's Jeannie, just to jump in, that's a good piece of advice, because I, throughout my whole career in working in this field, you know, since the 90s, basically, I've had occasion for people to call me wanting my help, but for something that I'm not, you know, it's not my, I can't help you with that, basically. But what I've learned, yes, that is the book. Dennis is holding up the Senior Information Guide. For those of you who are watching in San Luis Obispo County or in Santa Barbara County, actually has one as well, I believe.
Yep.
It's a gigantically helpful resource, and I have one in my desk here. The biggest piece of advice that I have given people who have called me for help is, after I try to give them the actual phone number of where they can call to maybe get the help that they need, if I don't have that, I will say, you know, whoever you call, when you get on the line with them, if they say, I can't help you, don't get off the line until they've given you at least 3 phone numbers. It's like, make them help you, at least by giving you 3 phone numbers. Say, okay, so I understand you can't help me, but if you could just give me 3 phone numbers that I could call to ask for, you know, further to explore getting help. I think that does 2 things. That helps them possibly find the right connection, but it also gives them that, I think, that a really important sense of empowerment that, you know, maybe I'm not the one, but somebody is, and here's your tool, you know, here, and make them help you, you know, you've got the power here, you call up, make them give you some phone numbers. If that's the least they can do, it's still something, and you're still able to get something out of that phone call. So that's my empowerment tool for the day.
So for those who may be attending or going to listen or view this in the future, just so everyone understands, every county in the United States has an area agency on aging entity or office. Every county. And that's a huge resource. It's one of the few really good resources, because there's so many directions they can send you, whether it's care services, financial aid, legal aid, any number of things, Wheels on Meals. They're sort of like a brokerage house of information and services that they can direct people to. What I've found, because I am affiliated with the office in Kauai, still, what we've found over the years is two problems. Although this is a great entity, they only do so much in terms of hands-on helping people, especially with the behavioral, psychological, emotional problems that relate to the aging process. They can only do so much. And mental health care professionals in general, my opinion is, only have so much time to do volunteer work in this regard. And then, of course, the other issue is the reality of so many people, even if they know where to go for help, don't ask for help. Because, you know, we all kind of, for most of our lives, if not our entire lives, feel like, well, we can handle it, we can do it, and it's sort of embarrassing to ask for help. You know, that's a mindset that's I find prevalent. So, you know, we're fighting a very difficult fight at times, and so opportunities like this are important. And the more people who hear what we have to say may be a little bit more motivated to seek help. What I always ask people who are reluctant to ask for help is, gee, did you get to where you are in life without any help from anybody all these years? And now at this stage of your life, you don't want to accept help. You might want to reconsider that. What can I do to help you?
Yeah, I like that.
And so many people are really good at helping others. You know, it seems for me, it's almost like now, you know, do you know what, you know how good it feels when you help someone else? You know, think about the gift you're giving somebody by allowing them to help you.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are actually fooled by that train of thought, but it works sometimes.
I would say my experience has been, I see a lot of vulnerability in my clients because the aging process itself leaves you feeling pretty vulnerable. So then to ask for help, there's a fear of, oh gosh, are they going to see me as cognitively declined, as not able to care for myself? The ultimate fear of, am I going to get stuck in an old folks home? So those vulnerabilities create this resistance or barrier to acting services. And again, they start to feel stuck. So kind of sticking with that theme a little bit, Lauren, I was curious if you have anything to add as a peer counselor, what you have seen work when people express feeling stuck or seem like they're stuck.
I just asked them to be stuck. What does stuck mean? How does that feel? Where is it? What's it like? Basically encouraging them to look at it from the outside rather than looking at it from the inside. Because when you're stuck and you're looking at it from the inside, you can't see anything.
Yeah.
If you can start looking at it from the outside, then you begin to see what stuck means, that you're not stuck everywhere. And I don't tell people what to do. I can't do that. That's one thing I learned over so many years of practice, is that I don't heal my patients. They heal themselves, and I keep them amused while they're doing it. And so that's what I try to do. And you would be amazed at how capable people are, especially with senior peer counseling. I'm seeing people in their 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Obviously, they have survived for this long. They must have had a hell of a lot of skills, of life abilities to live this long. Something has interrupted that for now, a loss typically. And although losses can be very tragic and very difficult, they're also this great opportunity. Now, I don't tell them that to begin with. I let them find that out on their own. And they do.
Yeah.
That this is, I think the greatest growth we all have at any time comes as a consequence of loss. Because if you don't lose anything, you have no motivation to change, to do anything, to grow, to develop. I think when you lose something, then you have an opportunity to look at all those things. And one thing I do, years ago, people would always say to me at the grocery store and other places, "Have a nice day." And I was always trying to think of a good response to that. And I heard one woman once say, "But I had other plans," which was funny, and I enjoyed that very much. But that wasn't what I was looking for. And about 3 years ago, I was leaving the gym. And as I walked out, the person at the desk said, "Have a nice day." And from somewhere in me, I came up with a response. And I said, "I'll give it my best shot." And that's how I look at it.
Like that.
I'll give it my best shot this day. It won't always be a nice day. Sometimes it's a shitty day, but I'll give it my best shot. And that makes me feel good. So
Yeah. That tied back really beautifully with Jeannie's poem about the idea of loss can also lead to gain. And sometimes those things are paired. Yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
I think they invariably are. There was a book written many years ago. It's called 12 Therapists. And it was about psychotherapists, psychologists. And the psychologist got the membership list from the Division of Psychotherapy, the American Psychological Association. And he sent out a letter to each one of them. And he said, "Tell me the names of the 3 therapists that you think are the best." And he collected all that data. And then he picked the top 12, the 12 who were mentioned the most. And he sent them a letter and he said, "You have been named by your professional colleagues as the best at what you do. Tell me about yourself." And he had a very extensive survey, which he did. And then he got all that information back and he was looking for what makes a good therapist. And the only thing he could find that they all had in common was that each of them had faced a terrible personal loss and had survived it. That was the only thing they had in common. They went to different schools, they had different backgrounds, they had different training, and they had different theoretical orientations. But the only thing they shared was that they had all had a terrible loss of some kind.
Wow.
So I think that does make us better.
Yeah. That's interesting. Well, you all seem to have such a positive outlook on aging. It's actually really inspiring to sit here and hear about how your lives have kind of improved as the years have gone by and how you've found ways to stay joyful and happy. I'm curious, was there a changing point? I mean, Lauren, you kind of mentioned it a little bit, like a changing point where you realized, oh gosh, I'm getting older. And were there roadblocks to you achieving this current level of satisfaction?
I think most of them were the ageism stereotypes that I believed along with everybody else. There's a really good book out about that by Ellen Langer, who is a social psychologist, I think from Harvard or Yale. It's called Counterculture. Some of you may have heard of her original study, where she got started in this was she went to a senior living facility, old folks home, and a group of the patients who were there, she gave a plant. And half of the patients took care of the plant. The other half had the plant, but the staff took care of it for them. And then she checked and she followed them up. They lived an average of 2.5 years longer, the ones who had the responsibility of taking care of the plant.
Oh,
Just
wow.
a simple thing like that can increase your life.
Yeah.
You are responsible for something, you have choices to make. It relies on you, it needs you. And this was probably her earliest study, and then she's done some others that are really fascinating that show how much our ideas of age and the debility that comes from age or accompanies it is imaginary.
Hmm.
It's
Wow.
a nocebo, the opposite of a placebo.
Jeannie, can you speak about some of the roadblocks you've experienced and how you've been able to navigate them?
Well, I guess a roadblock was, having surgery for an obstruction in 2015, and I was aware that if I died now, I was in no mood to be thinking about dying or, having this grand life and whatever. And so it was more an opportunity to remind myself that if I made it through this, that I would want to think about and recognize that when you're in pain, and in those moments that might be the end, your spirit might just take a hike and and not be with you. And so it was meaningful to me to spend time with my spirit when I felt better, and she was more available to kind of evaluate my life, to think about, the hard spots, what I've been through, and to come to a point of satisfaction, that I never made a safari to Africa, and I didn't do this, and I wasn't a famous person. I never, didn't do this, and all of those little things that we're taught that we, to have a good life, you've got to have
Right.
done
Check all these boxes.
and but my goodness, I made it. I got through my childhood. I made mistakes, but it's okay, and I got through those, and it's so amazing, and just to enjoy that, and to feel that if I went like that and wasn't even here to say goodbye, that I was satisfied with who I am and my life. So I do recommend taking time as an elder to do that, to review your life and be ready if and that can happen for a younger too, because we never know.
Yeah.
And just to take time to be with yourself, and I think as an elder, one of the things that I enjoy doing is noticing who's talking in my head, and that there are a lot of voices back from childhood that, oh, you didn't do this today, or you haven't finished this, and da, da, da. And it's like that I had, knowing that my voices and being able to smile at them now.
Hmm.
It's like, okay, I get it. You've got you need to do what you need to do, but I don't need to take you too seriously anymore. So that would be something that I've learned and appreciated with age.
Gosh, that's great guidance. Like, is this my voice or is this someone else's voice?
Right.
Talk for me. Yeah, I love that. That's great.
That resonates with me particularly because I think, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm, Mr. Old Age Wisdom now that I'm merely turned 65, but I do feel the shift from my youth of taking all those voices seriously and feeling like I have to be on a certain path. And I feel like if I haven't got a PhD by blah, 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 I'm going to be a failure at it. And I've taken all those voices, and I really feel, not on purpose, I feel like my life has taken sort of a shift into those being more like amusing. It's like I'm having a really, I mean, yes, there are challenges, and yes, there are problems, and yes, there are losses, but all in all, I'm kind of enjoying the freedom of being older, of getting older. I'm starting to really feel the freedom of aging. And I feel that's something that when I go back and look at all the stereotypes I had when I was younger, freedom of aging was definitely not one of them. but I feel that's one of the more powerful experiences of aging for me anyway, is that idea that there's a little bit of freedom in aging, in my humble opinion.
Dr. Pizzato, anything you would like to add?
Well, I think I've learned both personally and professionally about some of the major roadblocks to this aging process. And I can speak firsthand for myself, but I have learned so much from the people that I work with, that when you have physical limitations or medical and health issues, it really messes with your mind a lot. And it just, I mean, it changes the color and shape of the lenses that you view yourself in the world so drastically that it's just like getting hit in the side of the head with a baseball bat sometimes, more for some than others. And I have tried to draw from and have learned from the people I try to help, because it seems like I'm walking in their shoes more and more and more, which kind of really helps both of us. But I think my biggest aha moment, although my life philosophy and my advocacy of gratitude as being a platform for life, changed when I had a massive heart attack at age 66. I couldn't do the math. I'm almost 79. And not knowing if you're going to survive an event like that, and then waking up after open heart surgery and realizing you're awake, really changed my perspective on the kinds of roadblocks that can be thrown at us, and how do we deal with those things. So it not only did it change my personal perspective about moving forward, but it changed how I viewed those that I was trying to help who had similar issues and similar roadblocks. And it's sometimes it's an emotional roller coaster that's hard to stop or get off of at times. And so you really have to draw on so many things. And again, I flip-flop between my story personally and the stories of these hundreds of people that I work with, because they're so similar. So I look to them and their experiences for guidance, and I process this. And then I look at my own philosophy and I try all the things I can come up with. And if they work, then I use them more so trying to help others, because I'm just an average Joe. And if this is what I'm experiencing, it's probably what they're experiencing. And it's really difficult to have these conversations with yourself, or convince others to have self-conversations, or be aware of their self-conversations, and start laying the facts out on the table, such as you're 74 years old, you're 83 years old, you are resilient, you're still here. Look at all you've accomplished. Look at all the hurdles you've jumped over. Look at all the roadblocks you've pushed aside. That means you're competent, you're resilient, you have courage, you got to give yourself credit for that. If it takes looking in the mirror and patting yourself on the back so hard that you fall down, that's okay. But those are the facts, folks, right? And so that kind of self-talk personally, and teaching that kind of self-talk, is one of the many tools we can learn to deal with roadblocks. But it's an emotional journey that is not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. And all we can do is professionals or paraprofessionals is try to impart those kinds of thoughts to people and help them understand that this is everybody's reality. But mostly it's looking in the mirror and not being biased against yourself for what you're capable of. That's kind of what I've learned about roadblocks. I've got one right now.
And I so appreciate you sharing your personal stories, because I think a lot of times, especially as a youngin, going in there and working with my older adult clients, the feeling is, well, yeah, sure, you're okay because you don't have chronic pain, or you haven't experienced a health crisis, or you haven't experienced loss. And so really kind of putting the specifics aside of what you might be struggling with, kind of an overarching idea of how you get through those roadblocks is so helpful. No matter what you're facing, there's hope and there's a way to get around it. So I really thank you so much for opening up and sharing those personal experiences. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and Stephen Levine has a book, 1 Year to Live, which was based on cancer patients being told they have 1 year to live. But it's really written for all of us to kind of do a life review and be prepared for dying. But part of that preparation is just truly enjoying life and the gift that we have being here.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I think it's time for Jeannie to have a poem, right?
I think so too. I was going to ask her if she has one related to this topic.
Right, Treasure. This is a poem called Treasure. We look for it at the end of a rainbow, in a pirate's forgotten trunk, on a hunt arranged by parents or friends. We hope to be treasured. Children shout, "Find me, see me." When older, we pursue approval, love, and prestige. Grown-ups' way to say, "See me." When we begin to see ourselves, simply being alive is the treasure.
Wow.
As somebody once asked David Campbell what the meaning of life was. And he said, there is no meaning in life. What's the meaning of a flea? The meaning of life is that you are alive and that you are able to experience this wonderful world. That's all. And I like that.
I like that too. Wow.
When you think of the odds against our even existing at all, of all the things that had to happen over millennia that end up in me, you'd think we'd spend all of our time just reveling in the joys of being alive.
I've seen on three different I don't know, TV shows or whatever that I've watched over the past several months, come across the idea 3 or 4 different times that we're made up of stardust. And I just, and you know, I really love that, you know, you could talk about immortality in lots of different ways, but, you know, like Lauren just said, you know, we're all of us are made up of the same basic elements that have existed for as long as there's been existence, and yet here we are on this call, on this webinar this morning, sharing our different experiences, but we're all made out of stardust in that respect. And I think that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
You talk about immortality, and I've got to share this. I have become a great grandfather twice now.
Oh,
My oldest great grandchild had her second birthday a couple of days ago. And my next, which is a great grandson from a different family, will be 2 in 2 months.
oh,
And here's, I've never been able to come up with a good poem for this, but here's something where I have some kind of feelings inside when I look at them, and I have their pictures up above the toaster in my kitchen so that I look at them, and I cannot look at them without grinning, without feeling good. And that's a strange kind of immortality.
that's
They
beautiful.
don't know this, but I do.
Yeah.
I like that grinning, smiling idea. It reminds me that when I try to, excuse the term, sell people on the importance of gratitude, I defy anybody to be in the mindset of being grateful or saying thank you without a smile on their face or their eyes, and certainly in their heart. I don't know how you cannot smile somewhere in your being if you're being grateful. If
Yeah.
you're giving thanks for what you do have and not complaining about what you don't have, how can you not smile? And boy, oh boy, is that good for your chemistry.
And what a shift in perspective to focus on the things that bring you gratitude instead of the things that bring you suffering. Yeah. I think what really stood out for me in Jeannie's poem was the idea of being seen, because I do think throughout our lives, seen is so important. And I hear a lot of my older adult clients describe aging as you stop being seen, you become kind of invisible. And I'm curious, just your response to that idea of becoming invisible as we age, and how aging is viewed by our society.
Boy, you're going to get a little bias on that one.
All right, let's hear it.
I dare anyone to stop seeing me.
Exactly. See?
Anybody who really knows me understands
See,
that.
that's the youthful exuberance of a barely senior citizen. You know, we have to assert for ourselves. That's all there is to it.
Yeah.
We have to assert for ourselves, not in a boastful way or an egotistical way. Just, I'm here too. I won't say that I came before you, but I'm here too.
Yeah.
That's something I'm jealous of women about. They have a poem. When I'm an old woman, I shall wear purple. And a red hat that doesn't go. And I love that. And I am jealous because there's nothing like that for men that I know of.
You could write one.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, and I think it's, again, I experience that, and I don't go around asserting myself, but by seeing myself,
Yeah.
and, you know, I don't care whether strangers see me or not. You know, if I have to deal with a bill, then I can assert myself. But you know, and as Lauren was saying, that he sees himself in the mirror, and you know, it's like when you appreciate who you are and where you've been, as we've all been talking about, then other people's opinions, yeah, you know, I think there's a book of Why Should I Care What You Think, or something like that. Yeah.
If there's not, there should be a book titled
But I do notice myself looking at younger people and saying, you have no idea. Because when I was young, I had no idea. But
Yeah.
and then it
You
seems like,
can't.
yeah. And then when it happens, it feels like it happened overnight. What do you mean? Why can't I go play basketball? Yeah.
Yeah, that for me is, I feel like I'm in the, I feel like I'm in the balance of getting to that place where I have empathy for people who are, I mean, I feel like going back to the feeling of freedom that I'm beginning to experience as an older adult. I'm also developing a sense of empathy for the younger person that I was, and for the people who are young now, and watching them struggle, and sometimes wishing I could just take that away from them, and saying, hey, you don't have to worry, but that would be a horrible thing, because that's how we get to where we are. And I think I think those challenges are, trying to help them understand that those challenges are you, that's you becoming you. So we're not at the advice giving stage of this webinar, but that's what I would say. That's what I would say. That's what I'm going to say when we come to that part.
Reminds me of a story a patient of mine told me a long time ago. His name was Rhett, and he was from the South, and I'm sure his mother had an affair, mental affair anyway, with Clark Gable as his butler. And he told me his mother used to say to him, Rhett, you gotta climb Fool's Hill by yourself.
Ah.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Not fun advice, but good advice.
I've learned more from my patients, I think, than they have ever learned from me.
Yeah. I agree with that for sure. I feel the same way. Well, since we're on the topic of society's view of aging, I thought it might be fun to look at some of our cliches that circle around our society and kind of get your reaction to them. How about, though this is a pretty common one, age is just a number. What is your reaction to that?
Bullshit.
I vote for that.
Why? How is it?
Mark
Yes.
Twain once observed that in certain difficult and trying times, there is a comfort provided by profanity, denied even to prayer.
Oh my gosh.
What about that, for other than obvious reasons, does not ring true to you?
Well, in some ways, it's age is a number, but it's not the number that we feel inside of ourselves. Inside, we're still 10 or 15 or 20, depending on the day and the event. Yeah. So, we're multi-numbered. And that we don't need to worry about that. Age is a bunch of numbers, but it's like, who do we feel? What do we feel like inside? And I still want to go out and jump rope and play hide and seek at night. It's, I have to do it in my imagination, but it's still out there,
I get disturbed sometimes when I tell people how old I am. I'm 87, and they say, you don't look 87.
That was one of the next cliches. You look younger than you are.
Yeah. How does 87 look? My only response has always been, this is the first time I've been 87, so I don't know how I'm supposed to look.
Like that.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
But there are all of these things, and they see it as a compliment. you don't look 87, which means looking younger is better than looking older, whatever that is. A really interesting research done by Becca Levy asked thousands of people, and it's been repeated multiple times in a number of different countries. What's the first word that comes to mind when you see elder? And in the United States, the first word that comes to mind typically is memory loss. In Asian countries, the first word that comes to mind is wisdom. And I think that gives you a good idea of the attitude our culture has about age. We are a youth worshiping culture. Nobody gets plastic surgery to look older. But a lot of people get plastic surgery to look younger. Nobody buys beauty products to add wrinkles. We don't respect elderly. The idea when you reach a certain age is you should be put off somewhere in a building, behind barbed wire preferably, and live your life whatever it is, because it doesn't matter anymore. It's unimportant. And we've got a president who's almost 80, isn't
Yeah.
he?
How do you let or not let those thoughts that you're talking about, Lauren, get you down?
I just say bullshit.
Loudly, yes.
Einstein once said that two things are infinite: the universe and the human stupidity. I'm not sure about the universe. There's not much question about the other. And I see, I can't put much credibility into what people think when they have that kind of attitude. So I just tend to ignore them.
Yeah.
When you said the word elder, the first thought that came to my mind was honor.
Uh-huh.
And it gets me down occasionally. Well, not only for myself on occasion, but so many of the people that I encounter and deal with in my work are so saddened by the fact that they don't feel honored by family, let alone others.
Yeah.
And it becomes very demoralizing, and you know, in addition to dealing with so many losses and limitations, and then dealing with this whole idea that ageism conveys, and not being seen, not being noticed, it really puts them at a deficit emotionally in finding the strength to deal with all of the roadblocks that come along. And it really saddens me to hear so much about people not being honored, being ignored by their adult children, in certain segments of society. It's very difficult to deal with.
I tend to feel a little saddened about the people who can't do that. There are people who prevent themselves from learning some of the things I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
I've been around for a long time, and it's not just me, it's anybody who's elderly. Because if you've survived, you have to have learned some skills. You don't get to 80 by making stupid decisions or by not dealing with difficult situations. And I think younger people who tend to push away the elderly and tend to forget about them and try to avoid them are missing something. They're missing out on some great opportunities. I learned some neat things from my grandfather when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Things that I still think are very valuable.
Yeah.
I'm sure my grandkids and hopefully someday my great grandkids will learn some things from me.
Yeah.
At the
I've sure
very
learned a
least-
lot from you.
Yeah.
At the very least,
Me too.
I expect years from now, when my grandsons think about me, they'll have a good feeling. That's my immortality.
Yeah, speaking as someone who got to grow up with all four grandparents and both parents, I feel like I've been very fortunate in that aspect of life. I can tell you, Laura, that will absolutely happen.
Absolutely.
That will absolutely happen. All of my grandparents had something to teach me, something quite different from each one of them. And I carry all of that with me to this day. And the best thing I could do in my life is to be those people
Mhm.
now. That's if I don't do anything else in life, I can be those people for other people now. And so that I feel is that's a gift. And that's a gift you only get for getting old.
It can come with the territory.
Yeah.
Well, I'm noticing that we only have about 15 minutes left. This conversation has gone wonderfully. I wish we could do it all day, but I
Yeah.
want to give our panelists an opportunity. I just want to open it up and see if there's anything that you would really like to share or talk about, things that maybe haven't come up yet. This is never a quiet group. There's got
I
to be
know, it's
something.
like
There's gotta
that.
be
They're
something.
thinking hard. I can feel the thinking coming
Yeah.
through the screen of the computer.
When
Maybe
you're
Jeannie can read another
meditating,
poem and get our wheels turning.
Well, I'll read one more poem.
Great.
This is a friend who had 3 children, but his 5-year-old was holding the newborn, who was 3 weeks, and what the 5-year-old said to the newborn: "The world. This is your world, Max. That's the sky, and this is a room," says August, age 5, to Max, age 3 weeks. I'm 82. These words remind me I'm here and to take a good look around before I'm not. The world of my body pulses with inhabitants I can only imagine. Like a star, my body is born and burns itself out. I remember little hands and feet, their shapes still familiar, how I loved to jump and tumble. Now, seeking balance, I know I'm just along for the ride, my star hitching a lift on this planet that gives me a home, plus the sun and the moon. And I say, that's a tree. There's a poppy. Hear the wren sing.
Beautiful.
Big sigh.
Yeah.
Nice.
The amazing thing that's always amazed me about poetry is that when the poem is over with, I mean, such is the beauty of the language, is that when the poem is over with, it's like hard to even say anything.
Yeah.
You have to let it sink in for a minute.
Right. You almost need a moment of silence to complete the poem.
Yeah.
So
that's why when you're reading a book of poetry, you can only read a few poems at a time.
Right.
You can't sit for an hour and read poems. You have to read them and feel them.
it's too much.
The one last thing I'd like to say to our audience is don't be afraid to ask for help when you need help, and accept that help graciously. And think about the fact that if you're fortunate enough to have someone or several someones in your life who want to offer you help. Don't deprive them of giving you that gift.
Amen.
Yeah, that's a great reminder. Great reminder. Yeah. That kind of shifts us to the advice part of this webinar that Steve mentioned. What advice or pearls of wisdom would you have for people who are either getting close to aging, are aging, or maybe in the midst of some struggles? What pearls of wisdom would you want to leave our audience with? I think Dr. Posado's was great. I definitely echo that and cheer that.
Well, I would say to be kind, be kind to others and be especially kind to yourself, and realize that being a human being is wonderful, but it also has challenges and we need our personal support. We need to be our best friend finally, it's and to reach out for help if you need help finding how to be nice to yourself, because it is a journey, and we don't, learn it young. We have to develop that skill, and it does take practice. So just keep practicing being kind to you.
I would appeal to the wisdom of Oscar Wilde, who once said, "Life is too important to be taken seriously." It's going to be over. So enjoy it. That's what it's for. Also, another writer once said, "We are on this earth to fart around. Don't let anybody tell you any different." That was Kurt Vonnegut.
Kurt Vonnegut.
I like that. I like that.
And Ram Dass said, "We're all just walking each other home."
One of my favorite quotes. Love that quote.
That's great.
Yeah.
I want to sort of spend the last few minutes, Tracy, if I may wrench this out of your hands for just a moment. Marcel Proust had a series of 35 questions that he felt if you asked somebody all of these questions that you would get to know their basic essential characters without fail. I'm not going to ask you 35 questions or even 3 probably, but I cribbed some of those questions from the original Marcel Proust questionnaire of 1890. And I thought it would be fun just to sort of end on a note of getting to know you 3 in the moment now, in the present. And I thought these questions might help that a little bit. And then Jeannie, if you have another poem around, I would love for you to close us out after this section once and for all with a poem, if you would like to do that. So I'm going to start. What I'd like for you 3 to do is to answer these questions as succinctly as possible. And I know that's a tall order for this group, but if you, I know, hey, I'm including myself in that, so it's okay. But 1 sentence, 1 word, try to answer them as close to the surface as you can, and we'll see how many of these as we can get to. I just randomly picked out 5 or 6 of these. We'll see what we can do. Okay, Lauren, I'm going to start with you and go around clockwise here on my screen. Lauren, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
The thing that came to mind when you said that
That's what I want.
was a scene from Harvey, the play, where the psychiatrist, Dr. Chumley, is asking if Harvey can make things for him that he needs. And Elwood Dowd tells him, yes, he can. Harvey's the 6-foot white rabbit. And he says, yes, he can. He said, what would you like? And he said, I would like to be on a hill outside of Akron, Ohio, with a case of cold beer, and a lovely young blonde lady with my head in her lap, and have her say, "You poor, poor thing. You poor, poor thing." And Elwood says, "How long would you like this?" He said, 2 weeks would do.
That is the quintessential Lauren Acord. Jeannie, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
Well, I'll evade this with the Dalai Lama being asked that question by a waitress. And he said, "Oh, she said, what is the purpose of life?" And he said, "Oh, that's easy." He said, "Happiness is the purpose of life." And he said, "The hard question is, how do we get that happiness?"
The quintessential Jeannie answer. Dennis, Dr. Dennis, what is your idea of perfect happiness?
Falling backwards into 85-degree ocean water in Hawaii.
We are on a plane right now.
Let's go. Let's go. How could you not be happy doing that?
Right there with you. Right there with you. Lauren, what is your greatest extravagance?
The greatest extravagance is just to sit.
Okay, just to sit. Jeannie, what is your greatest extravagance?
Finding time for myself.
Dennis, your greatest extravagance?
Being able to sit down without a thought in my head and create something helpful.
Okay. Nice. Okay, this might be an easy one for all of you. Where would you most like to live, Lauren?
Right here, right now.
Aw.
Jeannie, where would you most like to live?
I want to go to Hawaii with Dennis.
Dennis, dare I ask?
We're leaving on Valentine's Day, Jeannie.
Okay, you better have large suitcase. Okay, Lauren, what do you most value in your friends?
Oh, that's easy.
That they're my friends,
Hmm.
Okay.
that they are willing to tolerate me and my peculiarities and still spend time with me.
Perfect. Jeannie, what do you most value in your friends?
People who listen, and sharing of stories, sharing the wonders and hardships of life.
Thank you. And Dennis, I heard you say that's easy. So what do you most value in your friends?
Their enduring support.
Well, I could go on. I would love to sit down for the next hour and ask you all of the questions on that. We're getting pretty close to the end of this call, so I must stop. Okay, one more. Lauren, which historical figure do you most identify with?
That's easy.
Probably the Buddha.
The Buddha.
Yeah, Gautama.
Okay. Jeannie, which historical figure do you most identify with?
I don't know.
Coming back to you, Dennis, which historical figure do you most identify with?
Saint Francis of Assisi.
Oh, wow. Oh, nice. Good. Okay.
These are easy, Steve.
Hey, I know. I need to.
You got to come up with something meatier than this.
Well, Jeannie stumped. So, did you think of
Well, I was trying to think, who are the women, that we admire, and actually Princess Diana.
Hmm.
She really cared for people and went, to so many places to relate to AIDS patients and children in Africa. And you could tell that she would have spent, weeks and months doing that. And Audrey Hepburn also did that. And I would love to have their energy and verve for going out and being kind.
Well, I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Jeannie, to close us out. I want to thank Lauren, Dennis, Jeannie, and Tracy for being here with me this morning and wrapping up this grit and grace of aging piece just beautifully and with a lot of grace this morning. But I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie to close us out with a poem.
Okay, thank you. This poem is called What I Want and What I Can Have. After dinner, I try to digest kale and cauliflower in my longing to live longer, and a root beer float in case my world ends tomorrow. I play the gamble game with exercise and diet, reminded daily by obituaries featuring people younger than me, the impossible becoming likely. I want to go out full, embraced by my life, the grand quilt of being here. Yet memories are remnants and come one patch at a time. And like moments, most fade unnoticed. After a storm, I take a walk. At the jasmine vine by my front door, a raindrop suspended on a stem stops me. What I want, what I can have, merge.
Thank you, Jeannie. And thanks again to all of you. And that wraps up this edition of the Aging Project. Take it away, Molly.
Much.